Hi, welcome back to Mysteries Channel. Thanks for clicking on the video. Let's just jump right into it today. Let's go over the story of God's very own banker. This story surrounds a man that goes by the nickname of God's banker. His name is Roberto Calvi, and he is born April 13th of 1920 and was a native of Milan, Italy. Calvi earns the nickname God's banker because he has close association with the Holy See. The Holy See is the jurisdiction of the Bishop of Rome, known as the Pope, which includes the Diocese of Rome with universal ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the worldwide Catholic Church, as well as a sovereign entity of international law. You know this organization as the Vatican. God's banker was chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, formerly known as Banca Commerciale Italiana. And if you try to go through the banks, who they are today, and who they were in the very beginning, it's a rabbit hole in and of itself. The banks that I'm telling you about today are now respectively owned or have become parts of Deutsche Bank, Chase Bank. I mean, it's so convoluted and such a mess. I just think that there is not enough time in the world to go through it all, but I'm gonna try. Banco Commerciale Italiana was managed by Calvi's father, but after World War II, Calvi joins the bank and changes the name of the bank. Banco Ambrosiano was the second largest private bank in Italy at the time, and it was backed by none other than the Vatican's very own bank, Vatican Bank. In 1978, the Bank of Italy produced a report from an anonymous tip on Banco Ambrosiano. The report found that several billion lira had been exported illegally, and this led to a criminal investigation. Calvi was tried in 1981, and he was given a 4-year suspended sentence, fined a total of $19.8 million for transferring $27 million out of the country, which was a violation of Italian currency law. He was released on bail pending appeal and kept his position at the bank. Totally seems legit so far. Calvi writes a letter warning Pope John Paul II on June 5th of 1982. This is 2 weeks before the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, stating that such an event would provoke a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions in which the church will suffer the gravest damage. This correspondence, which was found years after everything goes down, confirms that illegal transactions were common knowledge and that the Vatican and the bank's top officials all knew about them. Let's continue. Banco Ambrosiano collapses that same month that he sent that letter out, June of 1982, following the discovery of debts between $700 million and $1.5 billion. Much of the money had been siphoned off through the Vatican Bank, which owned 10% of Banco Ambrosiano and was their main shareholder. 10 days after writing the Pope on June 10th, 1982, Calvi goes missing from his Rome apartment. He fled the country on a false passport, initially to Venice. Then from there, he hired a private plane to take him from Venice to Zurich and Zurich to London. I am sure this was not his intended final destination, but he must have thought he would be safer there than he was in his own country. This was a mistake. On June 17th, Robert Calvi, God's banker, was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in central London with a length of orange rope woven into a lover's knot around his neck. He was weighed down with bricks and found with $15,000 in multiple currencies within his pockets. This was considered a suicide. Now get this. The controversy surrounding Calvi's dealings at Banco Ambrosiano and his death echoed a scandal that happened just a few short years before in 1974, when the Vatican lost an estimated $30 million upon the collapse of Franklin National Bank. This bank was owned by financier Michel Sindona. Franklin National Bank was actually an American bank and once in America's top 20 of banks. Michel Sindona was known as the Shark and was mentor of sorts to Calvi, God's banker. Bad loans and foreign currency transactions led to the collapse of this bank as well. Sindona died in prison after drinking coffee laced with cyanide, at first thought to be a suicide, later not so much. In 1984, Vatican Bank agreed to pay $224 million to 120 of Banco Ambrosiano's creditors as a recognition of moral involvement in the bank's collapse. It has never been confirmed whether the Vatican was directly involved with the scandal due to a lack of evidence. But in subpoenaed correspondence, the Holy See is implicated over and over and over again. You see, Calvi committed the crime of fiscal misconduct, and there was no evidence of church involvement otherwise, so the Vatican was granted complete immunity. Nothing to see here, people. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, is that as far as it goes? Of course not. There are a lot of organizations working together to make this happen. Calvi was also a member of a Masonic fraternity. The fraternity was called Propaganda Due. It's a Masonic lodge under the Grand Orient of Italy. It was founded in 1877 and its Masonic charter was withdrawn in 1976. It transformed into a clandestine alt-right pseudo-Masonic organization. It has been referred to as the state within the state and the shadow government. The lodge had among its members prominent journalists, members of parliament, industrialists, military leaders, bankers, the Prime Minister of Italy, all three heads of Italian intelligence services, and most of the CEOs of the largest corporations of Italy. And all of this during a time where it was 100% illegal to be part of a secret organization. It was literally against the Italian Constitution. Propaganda Due was involved with Calvi and the bank he and the Vatican ran, as well as Franklin National Bank, the bank that went down in similar fashion to God's Bank, and the manager of that bank, Michele Sindona, also a member of Propaganda Due. Michele Sindona had very close ties to the Gambino crime family, the Nixon administration, and was very good friends with a man named Giovanni Battista Montini, a future pope. The very pope put in place after the death of John Paul I. John Paul I died after exactly 33 days on the papal throne. He was known for actively trying to separate the Vatican Bank from the Vatican Church. All a coincidence, I'm sure. Now back to the shark, Sindona. Sindona made his money by managing Gambino family heroin sales. He made so much money he was able to buy a bank, then a few more, and then eventually buying a controlling interest in one of America's top 20 banks. So now, 2 banks have failed, 2 bank managers are dead, and Calvi's family needs answers. Not only do they need answers, they need a different verdict. It's the fall of 1991, and New York investigator Jeff Katz flies out to meet Carlo Calvi, the banker's son. Katz is immediately intrigued by the layered mess that is this investigation. And upon arriving in Italy, he is warned by the intelligence community over there that digging into this case is like dancing in the mouths of wolves, and you really don't know what you're getting into. I advise you back off. But it was too late. This family was serious. They needed a verdict to change, and they hired 30 individuals from all over the world to come and spend 2 years investigating leads that lead to the arrest of key figures in Britain, the recovery of millions from Italy's largest private bank collapse. And even 21 years later, it seems that some still need these secrets to lie and lie deep. Italian investigator who is also hired on to this team, Luca Tescaroli, was handed a hand-delivered note containing black powder, 2 12-volt batteries, and a piece of paper that had a note written saying, "This is an ultimatum, stop." The truth is, it was too late. Even after 21 years, clues have been left behind and we're still there. 3 months after Calvi's death, a small-time drug dealer named Sergio Vaccari was stabbed to death. At the time, the City of London police saw no link between Calvi and Vaccari, but Vaccari had possession of Masonic papers in his residence, and Katz tracked down Vaccari's former landlord and learned that the landlord had not only leased to Vaccari, but had also leased to Calvi for the few short days he was in London. The links in the chain were starting to come together. Vaccari, Calvi, the Masonic Rite are all connected. And Katz, along with a forensic expert named Angela Gallup, reconstruct the crime scene and conclusively established Calvi was murdered, and it was indeed not a suicide. It was decided that he could not have committed suicide, and was suggested that the City of London police, after an investigation that lasted no longer than 1 week, had been corrupted by their own ties to Masonic lodges. The City of London police issued a statement claiming that that was completely preposterous, and of course, that had no bearing on their investigation at all. For Carlo, it was very important to prove that his father was murdered, because a suicide verdict left him with no access to the $10 million life insurance payout that he was set to receive. He provides the findings to the insurance company. They are not satisfied, and another investigation begins, this time again conclusively proving that Calvi indeed was murdered. The money is finally released to Carlo and the Calvi family, but only a tiny fraction of it because, you know, his dad still owed $1.5 billion to creditors. So other things the investigation found was that Calvi was a haunted man as he entered his final days. As chairman of Banco Bragiano, he was in charge of an organization that laundered money made largely from the heroin trade of the mafia, laundered through his bank as well as the Vatican Bank. He knew the dark financial secrets of the Vatican. Letters of comfort were sent to offshore companies which he created, but were signed by Chicago-born Archbishop and key Vatican insider who had never faced an interview or charges. But even more ominous for Calvi was that he also had intimate knowledge that all large companies in Italy were making enormous political contributions and payouts, and not just in their own country, all over the world. In the end, it comes out that Michel Sandana, once Calvi's mentor, is the one who ratted on him. And Calvi believed he only had one chance to avert humiliation. He was going to tell the world what he knew. Many of the letters that he sent out to closer associates within the families spilled the beans on that. And this is what led to his death. In the end, Vatican, the mafia, the Masonic Lodge, politicians, and most of the government of this country were all working together and siphoning off billions of dollars, because I just mentioned 2 banks, but this was a proven strategy that happened over and over and over and over again. It basically goes like this. Bank comes up, bank launders money for the mafia or whatever organization has lots of drug money, pretty much, or trafficking money, because it's not just drugs, there's other things that are trafficked too. It is funneled out. Payouts are made to anybody that can stop this thing from collapsing. The minute it gets to the point where it may collapse, a decree is made. This bank is the largest bank in our country. Everyone depends on them. We're gonna do a bailout. Bailouts happen to both of these banks. And then what? Corruption is spewed out. I almost think that they want it to happen so they can just start the process over again. Kill the manager, drop the bank, start again. Just go to the next. And I want to make it very clear, this is not just happening. This didn't just happen in Italy. This is something that happens in many, many, many countries, maybe even all of them, maybe even tied to most of the financial institutions. Do you guys know any financial institutions that have had a bailout recently? Also, I want to talk about the hanging. Many people believe the mafia killed Calvi. I personally believe that this is something called a masonic lynching. You're going to go and Google this and you're going to find nothing on it, but I am telling you, I've come up across this many times before in research. The knot used is very symbolic. The knot, the lover's knot, is said to symbolize the bond between brothers of a lodge. The victims are typically hung off of bridges and not trees, and they also typically have rocks or bricks stuffed in their pockets. I tried to look up the color orange because that was the color of the knot or the rope that hung him, and I couldn't find anything significant about that in any Masonic stuff that I could find. So I don't know about that, but the rest of it is all trademark Mason Masonic lynching. I looked and looked trying to find other stuff where I'd read this, and the only one I could come up with was one. And if you go and you look up the Masonic lynching of 1879, I want to say it was in Willett, California, you'll see that basically the same thing happened. They took 3 kids in this situation, hung them off a bridge, stuffed rocks in their pockets, and the rest is history. So that's all I had to talk about today, but seriously, think about this. There's a lot of people here working together to make a lot of money, and it ain't me and it ain't you probably, I'm sure. So have you heard of God's banker? I never had, but I really never gave a crap about this kind of stuff before either. So yeah, that's it, I guess. Please like, share, subscribe if you find the content is interesting, and have yourself a very great day. Bye.